This is the part that they don't want to tell you. And this is the part that makes even the so-called all the numbers up and up on PlayStation side seem somewhat underwhelming. And those who are on the, PlayStation fan side in terms of their conversations are aware of this, data set, but are not necessarily saying anything. Before I jump into the video, shout out to audience members, Nervous Breakdown and Everborn. They sent me pretty much similar data points that are being highlighted in order for me to take a look at. Nervous Breakdown, I saw your message yesterday, but it was such a busy evening. And Everborn, I'm firing it up this morning, and here we are with Derek Strickland and Daniel Ahmad both pointing out PlayStation's operating margin in terms of their profits and in terms of what it is that's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to delve in deep to see exactly what it is that this company is doing with its costs, with its expenses, and its profit margin. Because this is quite strange that for them to be able to come up with what analyses, and this is analyses allegedly, 7%, they have to spend all this money to achieve it. While they're spending all this money to achieve it, we saw that in their little, financial, report for Q4, they pointed out that their single player games, or their first party games, sorry to say, are the games that are pretty much the least in their own ecosystem. Now, this gives us an idea as to where room is for their sales to actually happen, which is their first party games. PlayStation players, y'all need to buy more games. So let's go ahead and start from here. Derek Strickland, and I went ahead, Everborn and Nervous Breakdown, based on you guys' recommendations, I went ahead and found the Derek Strickland's post that is pretty much a source of all of this. Because what he's done is he's taking stuff and he's putting them in charts just to create a visual representation. He says PlayStation's Q3 FY24 has $11.053 billion of revenue, a new all-time high, beats previous Q3 holiday records, driven by a strong $3.8 billion in hardware sales plus other segments. Despite the new revenue record, PlayStation's Q3 fiscal year 2024 operating margin was just 7%. Revenue, $11 billion, operating income, $775 million. This is very interesting. This user, Oliver Darko, pro PlayStation, says, according to Sony's financial report, OI increases by almost 40% year over year. How does this correlate with the numbers you posted? Now, a 40% increase in that field would only bring a 1% point increase in their operating margin. It means, and some people are explaining it here, it means the increase isn't enough. That's basically what it is in terms of that. PlayStation is making a lot of money, but is spending way much money to achieve what it basically has in terms of its operating margin, which is pretty much the room between its cost and potential profits. This is where I've always said that PlayStation, and I'm pointing it out here, and I will say with all due respect, those who come out here and talk about this exclusivity thing, you're bothering this company from making money. You're literally standing in front of them and the money that they can make to increase their profit margins. They need to sell software in order for them to be able to enjoy exactly what this operating margin looks like. Let me show you where the deficiency is. This is Gematsu's breakdown in terms of what PlayStation's content services looks like. It talks about the hardware and software combined sales of 95 million units. The software combined sales of 95 million units during the 3-month period ending December 31st, 2024, up 6.2 million from the 89.7 million software sold during the same period. 11.6 million units were first-party titles, which is down 4 million from the 16 million units sold during the same period in the previous fiscal year. The previous fiscal year, I don't remember exactly what all they brought out during that time. Was it Spider-Man or was Marvel Spider-Man? It was Marvel Spider-Man 2 that may have basically bled into that particular time frame. 74% of the software sales of full game digital downloads, which is down 3% from the same period the previous fiscal year. A lot of PlayStation fans keep saying that PlayStation needs exclusive games. They don't need to take their games elsewhere. But they're actually bleeding in this particular area, while at the same time, They are not making enough money in the, they're not making enough money in terms of getting their margin to go up, and they're sitting with 7% up there. If the 7% is not a problem, then PlayStation can stay where they are. But for the expenses, it is a problem because you're making in more money than your other counterparts, Nintendo and Xbox, but your I wouldn't even call it your profits. Your margin is absolutely abysmal. It's like a single-digit percentage margin. That margin needs to be, in my opinion, somewhere around 12% to be respectable and to be somewhat safer than it already is. Now, I get it. 7% is still a decent number, but usually in business, most companies are looking for around 10% in terms of their margin at the end of the day. In fact, if we actually want to put it in much more simple terms, some companies would be elated if they had 10% profits. That's pretty much what a company and a healthy business is looking for. But this operating margin being at 7% doesn't even account for what profits will look like at the end of the day. So there's work that needs to be done. And the direct correlation for where work needs to be done is right there in their first party titles. You cannot keep waiting. And I've said this before. This one user was talking yesterday and said, PlayStation's first party is not their biggest point of making money. It's third party games, which was funny that a PlayStation player would say something like that and admit that PlayStation players aren't buying enough games and admit everything that I've been saying on the Video Game Fight School channel for the last few years out in the open because they wanted to cap for Days Gone. They need to go ahead and take their software sales into the day and date with PC and capitalize on the hype and capitalize on everything that will sell and push copies of these games to their max impact. That's what they need. Daniel Ahmad puts this out here and says, quick data point. PlayStation generated sales of 128 billion yen, which is $865 million, from first-party games and added content on non-PlayStation platforms in 2024, up 71% year over year. This is primarily attributed to Helldivers 2, as well as ports released on Steam. So, God of War Ragnarok port released on Steam, Helldivers 2, and other games pretty much were the bulk of this particular monetary increase. Did you hear what I said? This correlates with the reality that stinking Helldivers 2 sold more than Marvel Spider-Man 2 in the sense that it sold even longer down the road in terms of what the sales numbers and what the revenue numbers look like. So if they already have a pipeline for PC and Hiroki Totoki, who knows the internal financials, is already signaling that, PC doesn't look like it's a, doesn't look like it's a threat to us, then it's very obvious that the moment that they start to hemorrhage dough and require more money, they're going to pretty much go into a full-blown day and date paradigm. They're already there. They're there with live service games. It's no longer a conversation whether or not they'll go day and date. They're already going day and date with their most expensive money makers, because they've reallocated 60% of their funds to go ahead and develop these, live service games and 40% to develop traditional games. So the traditional games basically are not going to be getting the majority of the investment because it doesn't seem like they're going to make many of them. They already have their big four. Whatever Insomniac's cooking in each given period, whatever Santa Monica is cooking, whatever Naughty Dog's cooking, and whatever Sucker Punch's cooking. Everybody else, go make your live service game, right? And so it was interesting to see a comment from an audience member yesterday who continued to try to say, oh yeah, it was first-party software. And I asked them a simple question that they did not answer me. And I'll go ahead and show you the thread where we're having that conversation because it's very interesting. And again, I think, dear PlayStation fans, you continue to hold hard lines on your argument. And I think what it does is it backs you into a corner. You don't want to do that. You want to remain flexible with the entire paradigm of the market. Audience member of mine says that these numbers were, they were up and up, and basically PlayStation needs to stop porting, period. No more PC or Xbox games coming over, and then they can basically push to exclusivity like Nintendo. They can't. The numbers don't support that they push back to exclusivity, as reported here by Daniel Ahmad, and even reported here by their reduction in their first-party sales. This is where the numbers come in. This is exactly what I've been talking about. So I said the reason why software number was up was largely due to Helldivers 2. You know that's the one that the PC port did great, right? And then they said Helldivers 2 wasn't released in the reported quarter. We know. Then I asked you, I said, what was released in the reported quarter for first party that could have brought in such revenue? I asked, what game released? They replied and said Helldivers was not released, and I was asking what game. They replied Astrobot. Ladies and gentlemen, Astrobot only sold about 1 to 2 million units, 1.2 million units, and so we know definitely that the number of software sold during this period that belonged to PlayStation in the first party was pretty much 3 to even almost 4 times, if not more, in terms of the different games when it comes to Astrobot. No, I'll say, did I say 4 times? I'm sorry. This is what it says. 11.6 million units were first-party titles. So Astrobot, having sold about 1.6 million units, was only a drop in the bucket compared to all the other software that did sell. So that is a wrong answer, sir. You might want to go back and you might want to look at the data sets. PlayStation needs an audience that will buy its games. Whether or not that's a day one PC port is their business to sort out. But the so-called PlayStation fans that constantly brag about winning Game of the Year and all this stuff, you guys have to realize that there is more to Game of the Year than, there's more to a game than just winning a Game of the Year award. That is not a badge that a business wants to only wear. PlayStation has a way and has a pool in the entire games journalism space that more than likely will guarantee it a Game of the Year every so many years. However, their profit margins suck. I can't emphasize how much this is something that they need to work on over time. And the formula for them to get it done is right there, which is what's frustrating for me as somebody who wants to see them in a more competitive light, because they can easily go into the PC ecosystem with day one sales. They can easily get the job done and make sure that they can build on hype with their other titles. All this talk about their games and their single player games, the risk is just way too much for their creatives to just keep doing what they want. Their risk is just way too, sensitive right now. They don't have the risk tolerance. I saw somebody say, well, these single player games aren't coming to whatever, you're not going to be able to play Intergalactic. You're not going to be able to play these games at the time that they release. And I said, even PlayStation players don't want to play Intergalactic. Yeah. Even PlayStation players piled upon Intergalactic like crazy, and they downvoted that game to shreds, and Naughty Dog had to turn off comments on a game that they're bringing to their own audience, to the market. And the person reverted to, well, I'm not like those, I don't care what chuds have to say. I don't care about playing a game with diverse characters and blah, 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 blah. And I'm looking and saying, oh my God, even these so-called PlayStation fans are so tone deaf, they can't even see that if Intergalactic fails, Naughty Dog is cooked. They will fire team members. That they're not. This is not even a conversation to be had, because even with Marvel Spider-Man barely breaking even, PlayStation was already signaling to the studio heads that they needed to go ahead and reduce workforce. You may play the game, but the thousands more, the millions more that have refused to play the game are now a financial liability for Naughty Dog. Like, gamers don't like playing characters with, playing games with female characters. Like, that is the stupid excuse that anybody would have to come up with, when in reality there's more to the matter than anything else. So once again, this is a very complex issue that continues to pile upon itself. And as much as everybody may dream and sing and cry console sales, you're selling these consoles at very low margins in terms of profits, and there's only so much you can sell. In fact, what's going to happen is you can take this number of PlayStation consoles sold, you can go ahead and multiply that number by, say, another, by 2 in terms of any quarter, and PlayStation's max number of PlayStation 5 consoles is going to be very similar to PlayStation 4's own consoles, because majority of people are going to be moving up in terms of their consoles that they have. Here's another thing. The so-called exclusives, right, that people are talking about, even if they push somebody to go buy a brand new console to play one exclusive, who's to say that person is going to stay on their PlayStation playing other exclusives or playing other games rather than revert back to their original console to keep playing the games that they were playing in the first place. So even though 40-something% of these users may have bought a PlayStation console, the reality is there's going to be a percentage of them that are buying maybe a secondary console or a secondary gaming device to play a game that they didn't have access to on their primary console, and that console is going to be collecting dust. It's a one and done sale, and it's out the door, out the window, and there's almost no market proposition for that person to keep playing on that console or keep buying exclusives. Rather, if that person is here to buy third-party games, then PlayStation still has a deficit in its first party to fill. It's just not enough. It really isn't enough. Talk to me in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Peace out.